Hello to all of you. We're going to get started. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Library Experiences that Engage Young Readers. I'm Janet Nelson, Director of Library Engagement for Demco, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I just wanted to go through some housekeeping details, and then I'll introduce our speaker, and she can start today's presentation. On your screens, you should see a chat box on the right-hand side. If you have a question or are having any type of technical issue, please feel free to type something in there and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. We'll be taking questions at the end of the session, so if something comes up that you'd like clarification on or want to respond to, you can type it into the chat box and we'll be compiling all of your thoughts and questions and can address them at the end of the presentation. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll be sure to get answers and post them with the recorded webcast after the event. There's also specific contact information available for Amanda and myself that you should see on your screen as well. After the session, you can feel free to email us directly if you have specific questions that we may be able to help you with. We're also using Twitter today, and the hashtag is #DemcoIdeas. You should be able to see that hashtag on the side of your screen in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that feed as well for questions and comments. Just for fun, while I'm doing introductions, we're going to pop up a poll question on your screen to help us better understand today's audience. And our question today is, what types of programming do you currently provide in your library? So you can choose all that apply, and you can take a look at those options and then let us know. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go on with introductions. So as I mentioned, I'm Janet Nelson, Director of Library Engagement for Demco, and I'm moderating this session. At Demco, we're always interested in ways to better serve the needs of our customers, and these webinars have really been a great way for us to connect and provide additional information around important topics for evolving libraries. We're all aware that engaging children is one of the essential goals of most libraries. In addition, we're finding out that often there's activities that can be introduced that create a natural bridge that makes them more curious about learning and connects them to books that appeal to their interests. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Amanda Struckmeyer, who will be our speaker. Amanda is currently the Youth Services Librarian at Middleton Public Library in Wisconsin, and she's also the editor of the Children's and Early Literacy Collaborative Summer Library Program Manuals. Her experience has provided her with numerous opportunities to find new ideas for engaging children and tweens in her library. A former school librarian and teacher, she has also co-authored the book, Do-It-Yourself Programming and Book Displays, How to Stretch Your Programming Without Stretching Your Budget and Staff. Before I turn this over to Amanda, I just wanted to show you our poll results. So it's looking like most of you have on-site scheduled events, and many of you have some of the other types of events. But hopefully by the time you get done with this session, you'll have plenty of ideas for new ways to engage children in your library using all these types of programming. So Amanda, I'm going to put the controls into your capable hands and you can get started when you're ready.
Thanks, Janet, and thanks to everyone for joining us for our webinar on library experiences that engage readers. This is such an exciting time for libraries. We're changing all the time and really embracing our roles as places for connecting, creating, and actively doing. There's never been a better time to focus on engaging readers in our libraries. When we talk about engaging readers, we're talking about giving them experiences that are meaningful and interesting, helping them build personal connections to books, to their libraries, to their communities, and to themselves. We'll start today by talking about in-person library programming, and then we'll explore passive programming, outreach, and tools and tips for engaging readers. We'll discuss selecting topics for programming, planning and structuring engaging offerings, establishing and maintaining community partnerships, and more. Let's start with in-person library programs. Chances are you're already offering many of these at your library. These include story times, book clubs, art programs, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, or math events, and all of the other wonderful programs we host at the library. Often when we're planning a program, one of our first tasks is to select a topic. My best advice is to turn to your audience for topic guidance. Who better to tell you what they'd like than the people you're hoping to engage? There are several ways to gather the information you're looking for. The most straightforward way is to simply ask kids what they're interested in, what they're reading about, or what they're doing in their free time. This will give you a solid idea of some popular topics. One caveat is that if you limit yourself to inquiring of kids at the library, you're only asking individuals who are already in your building. You may want to reach out beyond your library's walls to ask a few children who aren't already library visitors. This can easily be incorporated into a school visit. Aside from asking kids about their interests, you can identify potential program topics by looking at circulation statistics and high-demand items in your collections. For example, if the Pokemon books are consistently flying off the shelves, a Pokemon program would likely be popular. One stealthy way to find out about popular topics is to observe kids' clothing choices. You can do this anywhere, at the library, on outreach visits, even at the grocery store. I recently noticed several children wearing Minecraft shirts, and this resulted in a popular Minecraft program. Aside from your patrons, you can find information on what's popular by checking out the movie marquee or browsing the shelves at Target. Merchandisers rarely miss a beat in what's popular, so rely on their research. Walk through the toy section and the children's clothing section and take note of any themes or characters you see. Once you've selected your topic, it's time to plan your event. While each program will look different, it's nice to keep a few guidelines in mind for structuring activities. The first is to appeal to as many learning styles as possible by providing tactile, auditory, and visual experiences. Also remember that, especially for after-school programs, most kids will have been sitting for much of the day already, so be sure to build in plenty of active, hands-on time. When appropriate, large motor activities like hula hooping, silly movement songs, relay races, or an obstacle course are well received. And relays and obstacle courses can be used again and again with slight changes to fit the theme of your program. Keeping a flexible, participant-driven structure is also advisable. One approach that I have had success with is using stations at programs. I'll often begin with a read aloud or a few short book talks, and then I'll introduce several different activities located in separate areas of our program room. After I've given instructions and demonstrations, participants are free to visit the stations in any order they choose, as many times as they choose. One child might spend the entire program at one station, while another might visit each and every station. This freedom and flexibility gives participants a real sense of ownership over their experience, and it allows them to select those activities that are meaningful and interesting to them. I'll give an example of a popular station-based program we ran at our library. We hosted a birthday party for Garfield the cat last June. Garfield's birthday is on June 19th. Mark your calendars for next summer. I suspected that many of our patrons were Garfield fans because of extremely high circulation statistics on our Garfield books, along with many in-person requests for these items from patrons of all ages. I wanted to make sure our program was engaging for young children, school-aged participants, tweens, teens, and even adults, so I planned a wide variety of activities. We had a Garfield beanbag toss and Garfield bowling, which appealed to patrons who wanted to be physically active. We had a speed gift wrapping challenge station, which was great for participants looking for fast-paced, small motor activity. Coloring sheets and fill-in-the-speech bubble comic strips, along with pencils and crayons, were at another station. And at a writing station, participants were invited to come up with as many words as possible using the letters in the phrase, "Happy Birthday, Garfield." A book display and lasagna rounded out the event. Now, I don't always provide this many stations. 3 or 4 stations typically provide a nice balance while keeping program preparations manageable. Along with varying the type of activity, I like to vary the difficulty of projects, especially if I'm catering to a wide age range. I've found that kids will often naturally seek out the activities that match their skills. Allowing them to choose a more challenging project or a simpler one gives participants ownership over their experience. If a child's mood or personality draw her toward a challenge, she'll pick the tougher activity, but it will be her choice. And if a child's skills, mood, or personality draw her toward something simpler, quicker, or with a larger margin for error, this is also her choice, giving her control over her experience. You may also be able to come up with multiple versions of the same project. At our library, we once celebrated Julie Albright, the American Girl character whose stories are set in the 1970s. One of our stations was friendship bracelet making. We had hemp string, beads, and instruction books. Some children chose to simply string beads on the hemp and loop the hemp around their wrists. Others used 3 strands of hemp to create a braid, and others poured over the instructional books, creating intricate knotted bracelets. At our Minecraft program, we included 3 stations. We called it Arts and Minecrafts, and we advertised it as a chance for Minecraft fans to do 2 crafts related to the game. And what you see here is a book cover, and this title and author will appear in your resource list from this webinar. And this book happens to be chock full of great, really accessible Minecraft projects. Patrons at our program created paper torches that actually lit up thanks to LED tea light candles taped inside the ends and perler bead magnets. The torches were a one-size-fits-all project with not a lot of space for personalization, though some participants did add colors, words, or pictures to their torches. The perler beads, on the other hand, had a variety of outcomes. Some kids made swords, some made pigs, and some made creepers. We provided a few ideas, and the kids really got creative. At a third station, participants had the chance to work together to build Minecraft-inspired graphics on the wall using Post-it notes. The Post-it notes lent themselves well to the angular look of Minecraft graphics. Kids worked in groups to create specific items, such as a tree, a shoe, or a piece of pizza. Seeing them communicate and collaborate to design the objects and then build them with Post-it notes was amazing, especially because some of them had been perfect strangers at the start of the program. Of course, not every topic is suited to stations. For example, we recently held a Marshmallow Builders event at our library. This was a nice STEAM program that was also really inexpensive. The idea of building with marshmallows has immediate appeal for a lot of kids, which was the first step in making this an engaging program. There could be many different ways to structure this program. I chose to have kids work in teams to build structures to meet specific challenges. Challenges included build something you could use to survive in the jungle, build something that's alive, and build something as tall as possible. Participants loved working together, and the open-ended challenges meant that kids could exercise their creativity. The supplies for this program were attainable with just one trip to the grocery store. I bought marshmallows in 3 sizes, spaghetti noodles, and toothpicks. During this program, I displayed books about building and architecture, and participants had the idea to try to copy some of the well-known structures in the books by making marshmallow and spaghetti versions of the Eiffel Tower and the Leaning Tower of Pisa. One of the things that made this particular event engaging was the fact that instruction time was short. Aside from a brief welcome, I gave less than 1 minute of instructions before kids were actively building. Spending very little time on instructions isn't always an option, but when it is, it's fantastic for engagement. Another option for structuring programs is a scheduled drop-in anytime model. In this approach, a range of time is provided during which patrons can stop in and do a project. I usually like to have my drop-in anytime programs open for about 90 minutes, and sometimes I hold them twice on one day, once in the afternoon and again in the evening. This way I can accommodate the after-school crowd as well as the after-dinner set. A lot of kids are busy with sports or other extracurriculars after school, and many are in after-school childcare. So offering the program in the evening opens up participation to a whole new set of families. For drop-in programs, I set up tables with step-by-step instructions and materials that are easy to locate and identify. This model works well for projects that can be completely patron-directed, with little supervision from the librarian. Even though you'll be in the room, you'll be talking with different people one-on-one, so giving direct instruction to every individual just isn't practical. Drop-in anytime programs often come across to patrons as less of a commitment than conventional programs. They know they can come whenever they want to and leave anytime, so these are often the first programs older kids attend. There's a sense of safety in knowing that you have the freedom to choose to leave at any time. We had great success with this model for our Make It Monday series of engineering activities. We offered these programs during the summer on, you guessed it, Mondays. Patrons were invited to drop in anytime during a 90-minute window in the afternoon or a 90-minute window in the evening. Each week, a different project or set of projects was featured. As participants entered the room, they came to a long table, and as they walked along the table, they picked up instructions and materials. Then they went to tables and set to work. Each Make It Monday had a theme. Go Speed Racer was our balloon-powered car, and this came from the PBS Kids Design Squad website, which is on here, and it will also be on your resource list from this webinar. And the Design Squad website has lots of great activities, so even if you don't choose the balloon car, you're almost certain to find something or many things that you'll want to do at your library. Launch It was catapults and puffball zingers. And the web addresses are listed here as well. The catapults was a really simple, quick project, and the catapults were a little more involved, and they involved glue, so the kids actually took them home before they could try them out. But the puffball zingers, otherwise known as marshmallow shooters or pom-pom poppers, they're in the lower right-hand corner, were really quick, and kids could actually use them at the program. And our third Make It Monday was Maximum Bubbles. And in this program, we made two types of bubble blowers. A bubble snake maker, which you see on the left, and a giant bubble maker, which you see on the right. And these are really neat because they just use household materials. In fact, the bubble snake maker uses a clean, empty water bottle, just like a single-serve water bottle or soda bottle. So it's a nice way to work in recycling and reusing also. And the one on the right uses straws and string. The nature of these programs is engaging to begin with, as participants are actively building something, but the drop-in anytime format makes them even more engaging, as participants have the choice of when to arrive and when to leave, and how much time to spend at the program. Another benefit of this format is being able to reach many families. Each family has its own schedule and its own set of obligations, and by offering two 90-minute windows of time, we were able to accommodate a lot of different schedules. For hands-on activities such as the ones we did in our Make It Mondays, I highly recommend providing illustrated step-by-step instructions. When you try the projects ahead of time, take pictures during each step of the process and use these to create your illustrated instruction sheet. Make It Monday programs are perfect for reaching reluctant readers and getting them through the library's doors. Hands-on engineering projects are irresistible to a lot of kids, some of whom may not consider themselves readers or book lovers. This is when a book display or a few casual book talks can really come in handy. While you're circulating around the room, chatting with kids, talk up some great books related to your topic. Have a bunch on hand for browsing and checkout. Chances are all of the books will be checked out by the end of the program, some by kids who didn't think they'd ever check out a book just for fun. Another type of programming is passive programming, also known as at your leisure, DIY, do it yourself, or stealth programming. Passive program activities are set up in the library for days, weeks, or months at a time, and patrons may stop in at any time and do them independently. Passive programming allows us to engage patrons in a variety of activities outside of the conventional program structure and schedule. Despite our best efforts, planning programs to accommodate every family's schedule simply isn't possible, and passive programming allows us to have something available during all of the library's open hours. Passive programs also engage children in a different way than conventional programs do. They give library visitors something special to look forward to, something extra to do when they're at the library. Many libraries have designated passive programming areas. This is helpful because patrons will quickly learn to visit that area to look for activities to carry out on their own. As far as what the activities themselves will look like, this varies widely. Something like a guessing jar, inviting patrons to guess how many ping pong balls, erasers, chocolate kisses, or other items are in a jar, is quick, easy, and, depending on what you fill your jar with, inexpensive. You can tie this in with a book display. Guess the number of erasers in August for a back-to-school display, or guess the number of Matchbox cars, you'll need a big jar for this one, for a display of books about vehicles. Provide guessing slips with space for the guesser's name, contact information, guess, and anything else you'd like. You might have the guesser include the title of the last book he or she read. A box with a slit in the lid provides a collection area for the guessing slips. At the close of the display, you might choose to award a small prize to the patron whose guess was closest to the actual number of items in the jar. Jars or bottles are also great for filling with a variety of items, creating I Spy games. You want to use clear plastic containers to prevent leakage, since patrons will be handling them. Place small items in the container and fill the rest with rice, leaving an inch or two of space at the top of the jar. The items you choose to include can be tied to a certain theme, book, or season. For example, you might create a display of animal books and include small plastic animals in your I Spy bottle. Or for a back-to-school display, you might include a variety of small school supplies. A pen, a pencil, an eraser, a glue stick, a crayon, even a bottle of whiteout or a very small plastic apple. Patrons will turn the jar so the rice shifts and different items become visible. You can post a list of all the items in the jar, or you can provide clues and encourage children to find the answer to each riddle inside the jar. If your animal jar includes a giraffe, you might write, "Look for an animal with a long neck." If you like, provide slips of paper with the list of items to find on them, so patrons can check off the items they find. You might choose to include space for name and contact information on these slips, and have a box for collecting them at your passive programming station. This will allow you to have an approximate count of the number of participants, and if you'd like to award a prize by drawing out one of the slips, you'll have that option too. Scavenger hunts are always popular at passive programming stations. There are lots of ways to structure scavenger hunts. One approach is to hide an item or a picture in your library and ask kids to hunt for it. You can choose to have patrons bring the item up to the desk for a sticker or a prize, or simply to tell the employee at the desk where they saw the item. Another alternative is to hide several items and provide slips of paper with pictures of each item you've hidden. Ask children to mark each picture as they find the corresponding items in the library. This is a really fun way to tie in a theme too. For example, going with our animal theme, you might hide several stuffed animals around the library. Let's say you hide a giraffe, a lion, a cow, and a cat. When a patron locates the lion, she crosses the lion off of her list, and when she finds the cat, she crosses off that picture. Once she's crossed off all of the items on the list, she either shows it to the library staff member at the desk for a sticker or a prize, or she places it in a box for a prize drawing. If you decide to do a prize drawing, be sure to include space for the patron's name and contact information. Two benefits of having participants simply show their completed activities to a staff member in exchange for something small are that they get to keep their materials and take them home, and they have an added interaction with a staff member, which is a good thing. Another approach to scavenger hunts is to ask participants to find specific things in books in the library's collection. When we do this, we like to provide full-page handouts with the scavenger hunt challenges on them and plenty of space for patrons' answers. The challenges are often open-ended. There could be many different correct answers. Our goal is to get patrons into the stacks and into the books, learning about our library. One challenge might be write the name of a book you find in the nonfiction section, or write the title of a book that has an animal on the cover. This is a great way to highlight different parts of your collection. You can ask participants to find a poetry book, an easy reader, an award-winning book, or you can ask them to find a book that is longer than 50 pages and write the author's name. Consider including questions about library hours, like what time does the library open on Mondays, or about policies, such as how many DVDs can you check out at one time. Kids may need to ask staff members for answers about some of the questions, and this is a good thing. The more we can encourage children to ask staff members for what they're looking for, the more likely it is that they'll become adults who feel comfortable asking for help and information at the library and other places. Even questions like, how many computers are in the children's area, work well. And there's no need to limit the questions to the children's area. Ask about the adult section too. Seeing kids walking around the library, searching out answers to the scavenger hunt is really fun. This is a great way to engage library visitors. They often find themselves in areas of the collection or even the building that they never would have otherwise explored. Passive programming also gives us the chance to facilitate collaborative projects or displays. For example, we once had an ice cream theme for our passive programming station, and one of our activities was coming up with original ice cream flavors. Each participant wrote his or her flavor name on a paper that was die cut into the shape of a scoop of ice cream, and the scoops were attached to the wall by library staff, one on top of the other, as we built a super-duper tall ice cream cone. The more patrons who participated, the higher the cone grew. Visitors loved reading the flavor names on the scoops, and they enjoyed watching the cone grow. To extend engagement, you might post a question on your library's Facebook page like, how tall do you think our ice cream cone is, either in scoops or in inches, along with a photo of the cone. Patrons can comment with their guesses, and after a couple of days, you can chime in with the correct answer, measured in both scoops and in inches. One of my personal favorite passive programming stations was our Kid in the Mirror theme. We set up a large mirror at a desk where kids could sit and look at their reflections. We stacked the area with a variety of hats representing different careers, and kids could try them on and see themselves. During this time, we ran a display of career books. After a few weeks, we swapped the career books for books about art, and we replaced the hats with paper and drawing supplies. A sign saying, "Draw your self-portrait," invited children to sit and draw themselves, with their reflections in front of them to help. We gave patrons the choice of taking their portraits home or leaving them at the library, and by the end of the display, we had a nice collection. We hung them on a bulletin board and later bound them into a book, which became a popular browsing item. Now I've got a question for audience members. Do any of you have favorite passive programming ideas you'd like to share? Feel free to comment with your favorites, as I talk about planning passive programs. When you're planning your passive programs, keep certain guidelines in mind. First of all, activities should be fun. Completing them should feel like a treat, not an assignment. Patrons have the choice to engage in these activities or not, and we want to make them as appealing as possible. Incorporate popular themes or characters, and make your passive programming area colorful, well-organized, and bright. A good way to gauge whether your activities are enticing is to invite other staff members to do them when you're putting them together. If they jump at the chance, you've hit on something good. If they drag their feet, you might consider changing up your plans. One key to passive programming is to keep activities appealing, quick, and immediately understandable. Try to stick with simple 1- or 2-step instructions and consider providing a couple of activities together that complement one another. For example, if you're putting together a guessing jar, also set out an activity that encourages creativity. For our animal theme, you might include a coloring activity with a prompt such as, if I were an animal, I would be, encouraging kids to draw the animals they relate to. At a sports-themed station, you could ask kids to design a jersey or other uniform, or even to come up with rules for a new sport. Something like inventing rules for an original sport will likely appeal more to school-age kids and tweens, and it's helpful to think in terms of accommodating a variety of age groups when you're designing activities. There's no need to mark different activities with recommended ages. Patrons will naturally seek out the ones that fit their skills, interests, and time constraints. Providing a variety of time intensities is also really helpful for families. A guessing jar is quick, so patrons who just have an extra minute or two can participate, while drawing a self-portrait is more involved, catering to visitors with a more generous time frame. You certainly don't need to give prizes or hold prize drawings, but if you're hoping to collect statistics, this is an effective way to find out the number of participants at your passive programming station during a given time. You can use this information for reporting purposes or for planning purposes, or both. If you include a field on response slips for age, you'll know how old your passive program participants are, which will assist you in your planning and your promotion. You can also include a field for favorite movie or favorite book, so when you're ready to show a movie or plan a book club, you'll have some suggestions at your fingertips. One goal at our library and at many libraries across the country is to reach as many community members as possible. We know that only a fraction of the people who live in our area are entering our library, participating in programs, and using materials. In order to reach more people, build connections to the library, and let people know that the library is a place for them, we do a lot of outreach. Now, the topic for today's webinar is library experiences that engage readers, and you might be thinking that outreach isn't technically a library experience. I, however, strongly believe that it is. It's carried out by library staff, and it's centered on the library, materials we provide, or activities we host, or any other facet of our services. So even though outreach activities don't take place within the library's walls, they're library experiences. And the more engaging we can make them, the more likely it is that we'll see the individuals we meet on our outreach visits at the library later on. The first step in outreach is to identify the audience you're hoping to reach. Are you looking for preschoolers who aren't currently attending story times? Or families who don't have library cards? Maybe you're looking to reach out to new parents to let them know about resources for babies. A few years ago, we identified school-aged children in the YMCA after-school program as a target audience for outreach. We were offering a lot of after-school library programming, but we knew there were a lot of kids in after-school care who didn't have a chance to attend. The next step is to establish partnerships with other community institutions so that you can reach the people you're hoping to reach. For example, you might talk with the local food pantry to explore the possibility of holding a weekly story time on site for families who are using the pantry. You might talk with local schools about distributing library card applications during back-to-school night. In our case, with our goal of reaching kids in after-school care, we contacted the YMCA to set up visits with their 3 after-school sites in our community. As I'm discussing outreach for the next few minutes, feel free to comment to share the name of an institution you partnered with in order to provide outreach services. You might encounter a wide range of responses from institutions you contact. Some will jump at the chance to work with you, and others may see your invitation as simply more work for them to do, an additional item on their to-do lists. Keep your initial contact light and friendly without working in too many details. Remember that this may be their first experience working with a public library, and they may or may not have a solid understanding of what the library does or why we would want to partner with them. Setting up a face-to-face meeting is advisable if possible, as you can make a personal impression and show that you're really interested and invested in the partnership. Go in with an idea of what you'd like to accomplish and how you can help the institution you're approaching. Establishing and maintaining partnerships works well when both parties are benefiting. Stay flexible through the entire process. The staff at your partner institution will likely have a lot of great ideas, so don't be surprised if your initial idea morphs into something different. If you'll be doing visits to places like parks, outdoor pools, schools, or festivals, you'll need to decide exactly what to do during outreach. Will you be hosting a station with a giant bubble maker, like the one pictured here, or handing out library card applications, or even checking out books? Whatever the case may be, make sure it lines up with your goals, resources, and staff. In our case, because the kids in the YMCA after-school programs often weren't coming to our library events, we brought the library events to them. A librarian began visiting each of the 3 sites once a month, bringing read-alouds and activities such as group games, art projects, and readers' theater. Before long, the kids started happily anticipating the library's visits. A few examples of visit activities included using plastic dinosaurs and modeling dough to make fossils after reading How Did Dinosaurs Count to 10 by Jane Yolen and Mark Teague, and making carrot-shaped bookmarks with faces including wiggly eyes after reading Creepy Carrots by Aaron Reynolds. This summer, we started a new outreach project in conjunction with our city's recreation department. We visited the outdoor pool several times, each time bringing with us library card applications, information about the library, popular books, and a laptop that allowed us to check the books out to patrons, and a button-making machine so pool goers could make a button to keep, bearing the library's logo in the color of their choice. The button maker, which is pictured here on this slide, is always a huge hit, and the pool visits were no exception. Kids and adults alike love using the machine, and the buttons are a nice takeaway for them to enjoy. We purchased our machine through American Button Machines several years ago, and it was worth every penny. We use it a lot for outreach events, including festivals and back-to-school nights, and we've used it for many in-library programs too. Let's move on to talk about a couple of specific tools that are available to help with reader engagement, particularly online. One product is called Wandu Planet by Evanced. Wandu Planet is a little bit like Pandora or Netflix, as it generates suggestions for readers ages 6 to 11 based on their interests. Games get kids engaged, while at the same time helping them to pinpoint their interests. Players may or may not realize that the games they're enjoying are actually helping the program formulate recommendations for library materials. The woodland theme, full of animals and a sapling to tree motif, representing a few interests budding into a wide variety of recommendations, is hard to resist. The database of materials recommended by Wandu Planet is extensive, and it can be accessed online from anywhere. A related product, specifically for reading program management, is called Wandu Reader. This product features a new theme each year, and it allows users of all ages to track their reading and progress through a game geared specifically for their individual reading abilities. Throughout the game, readers unlock different features and options, which is highly motivating. Wandu Reader is customizable, and user accounts are saved automatically, so librarians can easily track reading development all year long and from year to year. A lot of libraries find that Wandu Reader helps to engage their patrons in online gaming while easing the administrative burden for staff. Additionally, patrons can write reviews and monitor the prizes they have won, and libraries can add individualized information for certain locations or branches and award additional prizes. Your in-person library displays can also be an effective tool for reaching readers and engaging them in books. Displays can be centered around a theme, such as a season or an animal, or a display might feature a particular author, illustrator, or award. For example, a display of Caldecott-winning books could include a variety of medal winners, along with brief information about the award. When you're deciding which items to feature in displays, think about the process you use to choose topics or themes for programs. You want to figure out what kids will respond to, what they're interested in. Lately, we've had a lot of requests for our Who Was books, a series of biographies by Penguin. We had countless children approach the desk asking, "Where are your Who Was books?" Because their biographies, they were shelved according to their subjects. This, of course, meant that they weren't all shelved in one place, but scattered throughout the 921s, which is a pretty large section. Each time we had a request, we had to search the catalog or the shelves, or both, to find the books in this series. We finally decided to create a display of our Who Was books, placing them front and center in the children's section. We also included the What Was books from the same publisher in a very similar format, which focus on historical events, and the Where Is books, which center on famous locations and landmarks around the world. The display was an immediate success. We were able to arrange the books face out, which always helps, and simply having the books all in one place was a huge improvement for staff and patrons. Kids were checking out multiple books from the display during single library visits, and we were hearing feedback like, "I didn't even know there were Where Is books. I was looking for the Who Was books, and I'm checking 2 of them out, but I'm also taking this book. Where is the Grand Canyon?" We actually ended up purchasing multiple copies of the books in this series because our display has boosted their circulation so much. Keep in mind that the goal of a display is to get the materials on the display checked out. So if you find yourself restocking frequently, that means you've done a good job of selecting a topic. Don't be afraid to include audiobooks, DVDs, and other formats too. Beyond conventional book displays, if you have a display case available to you, you might want to consider hosting displays created by patrons. Invite kids or families to sign up for 2-week periods during which they will run a display. They can include personal items such as Lego creations, dolls, or collections, and they can incorporate thematic books as well. For example, if a child is displaying a collection of seashells, he also might find some books on the ocean or on shells and include them in the display. This is a great way to encourage kids to become more familiar with the catalog and the collection, particularly in the nonfiction area, as they create the display. Finding books for their own displays gives them a new purpose in searching. This is also beneficial for patrons who are browsing, as they'll see items and materials that another child is recommending, which may make them more appealing. Be sure to indicate that materials on display are available for checkout. This type of display is really effective for reaching out to reluctant readers. What better way to make a child feel at home in the library than by inviting him or her to show off some special items and select books to accompany them? My last tip for you is the most important of all when it comes to engaging readers. Whatever you do, whether it's creating a book list, facilitating a program, forging a relationship with another community institution, putting together a display, or staffing a desk, have fun and smile. Your enthusiasm about the library and the materials you work with will transfer to patrons who will, in turn, become more excited and more engaged. Janet, it looks like we have time for a few questions.
Thank you, Amanda. So much really great information. And yes, we do have a few questions here. And if anyone else has questions, feel free to chat those in. We had several people that were interested in a little bit more information around the passive programming. So one of the questions here is, how do you account stats for passive programming? It says we're trying to account for this type of programming in our library system in a way that indicates not just how many patrons are utilizing the opportunity, but the kind of staff time involved as well.
Okay, so we touched on how to count the number of patrons and how to collect statistics on the patrons who are involved, and I'll give a little bit more information on that, but then we'll talk about the staff side too. It sounds like that's really where the question focuses.
That sounds good.
Okay, so we create slips of paper that are in Microsoft Word, just maybe a quarter sheet, and on the top it says, I did a DIY activity. We call our passive programming area the DIY or do-it-yourself station. And frequently we have 2 or 3 activities, so we'll have little check boxes and the name of the activities. For example, if there's a scavenger hunt, we might have a checkbox and it would say scavenger hunt, and then a checkbox and it says guessing jar or something like that. And then there's space for name, age, phone number if we plan on giving a prize, and anything else we want to know, the last book you read, the last movie you watched, your favorite anything, whatever we're interested in, and that's just extra fun for them, but it also gives us a new little glimpse at what our patrons are interested in. And then we usually leave ours up for a month at a time, our DIY displays, before we change them out. And so we have a raffle box sitting there and patrons put their slips in. At the end of the month, we count up the number of slips in there. We do check for duplicates just to make sure we're not counting the same patron multiple times, although it depends on what your goals are in statistic counting, if you want to count the number of unique patrons or the number of visits that your DIY station had. You'll need to decide that before you start on your passive programming journey. So we count those up and we record those every month just so we know how many we're getting, and it gives us the sense of what's more popular, what are the more popular activities at our passive programming station, and also is it worth it? Is it worth it to continue putting staff time into this, because it is a commitment from staff. And you asked about keeping statistics regarding the amount of staff time used, and this is something we build into our library assistance jobs. Some of our professional staff, myself included, came up with the activities we were going to use and generated the materials initially. And many of those actually appear in the book DIY Programming and Book Displays that myself and a colleague authored in 2010. And so those are all ready to go, and we have library assistants who do the photocopying and the setting up and the collection every month when we change out our display. And we don't We don't collect statistics, but if you were going to, you could certainly have that be a task for someone and just say, well, start this, work on it on this day and keep track of the number of minutes or the number of hours you spend prepping for this, and then maybe compare it to the number of patrons you had. And sometimes there is a little bit of staff time needed in the middle of the month for us if we need to restock something, or if we have something that kids are turning into the desk, for example, a scavenger hunt or something like that. And it's such a brief interaction that we don't track it. You certainly could. You could keep a tally sheet at the desk and ask staff to make a hash mark every time a patron approaches the desk to ask about the DIY station or the passive programming station, or to turn in a slip or something like that.
Perfect. That's really helpful information, Amanda. Another thing that tags on to the idea of the passive programs is this listener was asking, how do you suggest managing and storing of the materials needed for passive programs?
That's a great question. And one of the great things about a lot of the materials is that they are reproducibles, so you can simply keep the master on your computer or in a file and make copies as needed. But for things like the guessing jars or the I Spy containers, you can generate those every year. If you know that you're going to use it again, you can stash it away and get it out again every year, especially if it's something perishable or semi-perishable, something like the chocolate kisses example. You obviously wouldn't want to keep those, and sometimes you can make that into a prize, so whoever's guess is the closest to the actual number of chocolate kisses gets to win the jar of chocolate kisses or the jar of school supplies. So you can have it be a giveaway as part of your interactive element. Or you can create a space in your storage area or on a shelf and in your office space and keep those things together. And if you do rotate topics monthly and you repeat the same topics each year on the same months, it's just kind of handy to have that ready to go to grab, because it doesn't take long to put together something like an I Spy container, but we're all busy and it is really nice to just be able to reach for that and grab it.
Great ideas on that. Here's another one on how can we get underachievers to pick up good books that are their reading level?
Great question. So first of all, it's important to have those books in our collection. Looking for books that are, a lot of times they're called high-low books, so high interest, low reading level. And we want to house them where readers are going to find them. So you don't want to house high-low books for, say, fifth graders with the easy readers, even though that might be where the books belong in terms of their content or their actual reading level. Fifth graders are not going to go to the easy reader shelf and want to check out books from there. So you can really highlight things. You could make a thematic display that included multiple high-low books along with a variety of other really engaging books. And publishers of high-low books typically do a great job of selecting the topics for those books and the themes. So those are a lot of times really appealing to begin with, and you can bring in other resources on those same topics. So that's one way you might do it in terms of a display. And in your programming, you can always, especially for something like a book discussion. I have a book discussion group that meets every month at our library that's for tweens, and we refer to tweens, meaning ages 8 to 12. And every month there's a topic, and kids read a book in preparation for the event, but they have a choice of 3 books. And I always choose one that's along the lines of a beginning chapter book, something like a Magic Tree House book, and then something that's kind of an in the middle chapter book, and then something that's an ages 10 and up chapter book that's really longer and more challenging and in-depth. So kids can still participate fully whether they've read the ages 10 and up book or whether they've read the Magic Treehouse book. They're all about the same theme. So we have a discussion together and then we do activities related to that theme. So offering choice in book discussions is a great way to do that too.
Great idea. I know that that's a really challenging group to engage, so I really appreciate your thoughts on that. Okay, another one is what types of things can you do to get children to regularly come to story time or toddler time?
Great question. So if your goal is to have kids coming on a regular basis, one thing you can do is look at your schedule, the schedule that you're offering, and make sure that it lines up with your community's needs. A lot of times it's really hard to know when other things are happening for those age groups, for babies and toddlers and preschoolers. So it's important to be connected to the other community resources in your area. So if you find out that, oh, the baby group at the hospital meets on Thursdays at 10 o'clock, you'll want to offer your story time at a different time. You won't want to offer your story time opposite of that on Thursdays at 10 o'clock because you'll just be competing. So you want to make sure that you're really accommodating people with your schedule, and also looking at things like registration policies. At our library, we lifted our registration requirement for story times a few years ago, and it has been phenomenal. I really think we see more people regularly than we did before because there's not the added worry and stress of being registered for something and feeling like you have to show up or not wanting to register because you want to avoid that stress. So think about that as well. And just keeping your story times fresh. There are so many resources online for story time songs and books. One of my favorites is Jaybrary, which you're probably familiar with, and we can include that in our resource list. So if you're ever looking for songs, you'll want to definitely check them out.
Perfect. Great suggestions. Okay, one last question before we wrap up. This listener was looking for ideas for a makerspace that need minimal instructions and supervision, but can be shared with multiple students.
So you may want to try projects such as the ones that I mentioned in the Make It Mondays. Those would be considered makerspace projects. And really all I did was lay out, as participants walked in, they came to a table with all of the materials and the instructions. They picked up an instruction sheet. It told them exactly how many of each thing to pick up on the materials table. They picked those up, they went to tables, and they started working on their own. So something like that would work. And I would recommend looking at some of the links that I provided with the Make It Mondays. There was one blog where I found several things. It's called Come Together Kids, and that is a mom. It's run by a mom who does all kinds of engaging projects with her children, and especially STEAM and maker projects. So you can find those ideas there. And then the PBS Design Squad that I mentioned is also a great place for ideas.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all those thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up now. Thank you, Amanda, for sharing your insights and ideas around what can be done to create engaging programs that really encourage reading. So we hope that everyone was able to take away a few new ideas to try. There was some great discussion, and we appreciate all of your sharing your time with us. You will be receiving a survey at the end of the webinar to let us know how we did. Please take a few moments to fill this out. We would really love your feedback so that we can make these sessions even better in the future. Feel free to comment on other topics that you'd like to see more information on or speakers that you'd like to hear from so that we can consider building some of these things into our future schedule. We have received really great feedback from our previous webinars that's helped us to focus on the topics that you're most interested in. So a recording of this webcast will be available on the Demco Ideas and Inspiration website by tomorrow. So that's at ideas.demco.com, or if you can't remember that, the site can also be accessed through the demco.com website. So if you missed something or just wanted to review it, you can go back and refresh yourself on the presentation or share it with your colleagues. Next week, you'll be receiving an email that will include resources such as the slides and a Q&A log that documents the questions and answers that came up today. Anything that we didn't get to as far as questions, we will also get those documented in that log. So again, thank you for joining us today. Please consider joining us on October 21st at 1 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, when Marge Lock-Wouters presents 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, Early Literacy Do-It-Yourself. So keep watching Demco and Ideas and Inspiration site for other new webinars, and you can also find many that are available on demand to watch at your convenience. So we hope that you'll be considering us for future events, and again, so glad you joined us and hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.